Welcome back to the Keri Croft Show. In this episode, I sit down with Cris G W. Cris is an advocate in the education space, and she's also been known to ruffle some feathers here and there. One thing I really admire about Cris is her authenticity, and the other part of Cris I like is she owns her shit, which is more than I can say for most people out there. Another thing, if I'm ever in a dark alley at night, Cris G W is who I want by my side. I really enjoyed talking to this woman. She's very intelligent and she has a lot to offer the world. I hope you enjoy it too. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the Keri Croft Show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Keri Croft, and I'm here today with my girl, Cris G W.
Hello.
Welcome to the Keri Croft Show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am smitten as a kitten.
I love kittens.
I was going to say, I use that as a good starter to get your heart right.
I was
wide
born
open.
in kitten season.
Were you born in kitten season?
In prime kitten season, yeah. April.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is kitten season, Cris?
It's when the most kittens are born in springtime. So
How do you know this?
I just love kittens, and it's when there's like copious amounts. It's like when the deals on kittens happen. $25, get a spayed kitten, adopted at the center. Oh, I have one at my home.
I love it.
Yeah. Kitten season.
Now, this song, when I was lucky enough to have you say yes to me,
I would never have said anything but yes.
But now, what song could I find for this friend o' mine? And Firestarter just came right up.
And I'm a fire sign.
You are a fire sign.
Yeah, it's an Aries.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll get back to this Firestarter song, but I thought I would start off with that. Seriously, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And I was very candid with you on my agenda of why I wanted to have you here. And I want to frame it up right from Jump Street. Okay. So I have always been very intrigued with you. Superficially, you're drop dead gorgeous. And then you open your mouth and you'll say anything that's hilarious, goofy, awkward, all of it.
Super awkward.
Which adds to it, which all of a sudden you're like, okay, wait, but I'm really endeared to her. And like, don't say anything stupid when you're training or offend anyone when you're training. Remember that? Like, I love you, but don't say like that you smoked weed or farted or something.
I mean, everyone farts.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And then, and you also have this, your reputation precedes you. And I have this too. I feel like we're kindred spirits in a way where I feel like you're highly misunderstood in ways. But ultimately, what I really am interested in doing today for just my 10 subscribers is showing the full Cris, because I think, you're a lot of things, but I don't think your intelligence and your advocacy and the really great shit you're doing in the world, I don't think that's talked about enough. And it might be because the Firestarter side of you, who's, you're passionate and you're picking your well, not really picking battles, you're just battling, right?
Yeah. They pick me often.
They pick you.
I never, if someone picks a fight with you.
Yeah.
It's like, you gotta end it.
But here's the thing. Whenever I hear, especially like the last couple of years, oh, Cris, she's doing this, or it was always something about, some controversial, trivial stuff. But I'm like, wait, you don't understand. Like, this chick's amazing. So let's first start with the award that you just won. And what do you do?
Yeah. So I think it's a little by design that I'm a little misunderstood. A little bit of a misfit toy. It kind of makes me successful and who I am in a way. But so I am the vice president of an organization called Oakmont Education, and the CEO and founder came to me about 6 years ago. We've known each other a long time, and he had a really cool idea to work with schools that were with dropout kids and do some career tech engagement, career tech, skilled trades. Think of like construction, healthcare, culinary, high demand jobs with kids that have dropped out of school, and then try to do something a little different to like follow them, track them, whatever. And why that's kind of important is because I was a bad kid. I know that's really hard to believe. I guess maybe not a bad kid, but what they called in the 90s an indigo child. So maybe we'll get to that another time.
No, actually, a minute. I want you to take a minute for that, because when you and I were talking
the indigo children,
of course I do research, right? And I'm like, okay, so your mom used to tell you about this indigo children thing. So I looked it up.
Yeah,
and
it was my abuela who told my mom, I think Christina, and she's not here anymore, but she was like, I think Christina is an indigo child.
Well, so let's, along with that, because I will say that I had never heard of that before.
I bet you're an indigo child.
Do you think? I think when I was seeing some of these traits, I was like, well, okay, this is, but I feel like you're like really spot on. So you feel spiritually awakened. You are destined to be here. You have high expectations of yourself and others. You have a strong intuition. You question authority. You want to overturn the man. You are creative. You are a change maker. You are a lost soul. You are headstrong. You are passionate and focused. You have psychic abilities, which we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
And you are frustrated.
All the time.
Now, if
frustrated, but
in a way
content, which is bizarre.
But I get that.
And contradictory.
But if anybody out there who knows you hears those 13 things, you were just like smash.
And 13 is my lucky number. So.
Like we just hit on all of that, right? So back to you saying I was a bad kid.
Yeah, but I think that I was just, like, I remember my mom, we were just actually talking yesterday. We had a FaceTime, and she said when I was like 1, she put me in front of the mirror and she was like, Christina, I'm in charge. I'm the mom. I'm the boss. And I was like, 1. So I'm thinking, that's bizarre. Like, what was I doing? I mean, she just was like, you were just that way from when you were young. Just never fit. I actually did the award we won, back to that, was a Forbes prize with the YAAS award. The YAAS family is a really incredible family in New York City. It's really philanthropic. And there were 2,700 applicants, narrowed down to 9 people that were the winners. One was awarded $1 million for their idea, and we were awarded $500,000 to expand opportunities for the kids we serve. So felt kind of surreal to be up there as somebody who's been bad or on the outskirts of what is considered typical or acceptable or normal, I guess. But yeah, I have felt pretty called to my work. And so that's, I think, why a lot of times I allow people to misunderstand me, because I don't really care. I used to. I will be very honest. I did. There was a time when I really tried to be understood, and I realized you can't make people that don't have the capacity, you can't make them understand you. That it's like not about me. Like I was like, oh, this person doesn't even have the capacity to take me in. Mm-hmm. That's on them. Like, oh my God, and I hate to say that, but like, it used to be like, what's wrong with me? Like I have to go back and like, something wrong with me? Like and then I was like, nothing's wrong with me and nothing's wrong with them. But they don't have the capacity for me, and I'm not going to make myself small.
You're not going to shrink in.
No.
And yeah.
I mean, I'm not. And, it's just like, I'm still like trying to be comfortable in myself. We all are,
So I have two paths that are really important here. And I want to branch into first, if you don't mind, the childhood and how you were as a kid. And you just did an article, a really cool article that I'd like you to talk about. But on the shelf, just to hold us accountable, back to your work and just these kids and the trade in America, specifically these trades that, are so important. I want to make sure we definitely delve into that. So let's first go into you growing up in this article and really your experience as a child.
Yeah, I had an incredible childhood. My parents were great. My mom came from Cuba in the late 60s. Met my father in Northeast Ohio. They got married when she was 20. They've been married ever since. They're really cool. I had a good childhood. Things kind of got a little dicey when my best friend passed away. I was going into my freshman year. And then I had a sexual assault type of situation that happened. And I think that, in the 90s, it was a little different. There wasn't really like therapy, or people didn't really talk about things. And so also there was like a whole 90s angsty punk movement kind of happening. And like, I was really into I kind of started hanging out with like kids that you would consider quote bad kids, but really my mom was like, don't hang out with those kids. I was actually probably one of the worst influences, to be quite frank. So my mom should have been like, they shouldn't hang out with you.
Well, moms don't do that though.
No, I do. As a mom.
Well, I really hope that I do, because I hear some moms where I'm like, wait, have you ever thought like, your kid might be the problem?
Is it I go into it like, what did they do? Because I know that like...
I can't imagine your kids are probably like, attention.
I'm like, what happened? Who? But they didn't do anything. Yeah, so things kind of started to... I just kind of started to like flex my capacity to push adults in my life. And parents, school people, and everything came easy to me academically. I didn't need... It just always did. So I was leaving school, skipping school, stealing stuff, running away, doing drugs, selling drugs, you know, just your normal 90s teen stuff, listening to ministry, running away, being bad, you know, all that crazy stuff. And so there was a real exciting time in the 90s where people were like, you know what we should do with these troubled teens? Take them to unregulated facilities and wilderness programs. What better idea could we have? I mean, there's a lot, but I digress. So put away into the day treatment programs, and I would be like, they'd be like, take this med, and I'd like take the med and like spit it across the room. Like I was like, no, from the jump. Like they were not going to take the square shape and jam it into the circle.
Right.
Like they weren't going to do it. Or the circle into the square. I didn't fit. And so then they were like, we can't deal with her here at this facility. So they were, you know, they're like, we can't have her. So I went home, and then one night I was like 2 a.m. and I woke up, and it was 2 strangers, a woman and a man. And I was like screaming for my parents, and they were like, get up, get your clothes on. We're going to the airport. Your parents hired us, and you're going to a treatment program. And I was like, no way, you guys are like kidnapping me. And they handcuff and take me through the airport. And it's like, people are staring at you, and land on a plane, go to a wilderness program. Was there for 6 weeks. You know, these outward kind of, you know, it was called SUS, the School of Urban Wilderness Survival in Utah. 6 to 8 weeks there. Went to a halfway house. Was not complacent. I know that's shocking. Moved from there. Moved to another wilderness program. So then I went to this boarding school for girls, and my parents didn't have a lot of money. And my dad was they had a good life. They provided for me, but I'm first generation college graduate. I'm the first gen, you know, all of that. But my parents sent me to the school per somebody's recommendation. And I was there for a minute, and it was like fucked up, man. Like, have you seen Stolen Youth, the documentary that just came out about like this cult-like thing in college? And it's like this guy named Larry. It's so strange. That's his name. And he like mind controlled these kids and like made these like brilliant people, like this doctor from Harvard, and this made them not understand what reality was. And I was like, holy shit, Josh. It's my husband. I was like, this is like what was happening at this boarding school. Like when you got there, they'd be like, okay. And they weren't like trained to do this. They weren't psychologists or anything. And the guy was like, write a sexual history. And this is what kind of stood out to me as an adult looking back. School's no longer around. They got shut down. Write a sexual history. Everything detailed in this book, in these binders. You have to write a drug history, a sexual history, you know, whatever history. And I was like, these girls are writing everything. And I was like, fuck this, dude. I'm not writing shit. So I was like making stories up, and they were like, start very normal. And then they would just so crazy. And like, he would just rage at me because I was like, something's not right. It's like, I just knew my body, as a teenager, I knew something was up. I just was like, no. So he knew something was up with me too. His name's John. So he put me in a program away from all the girls by myself called Intervention. So he put me in the woods by myself, and I lived there for like 5-ish months, maybe almost 6.
Now, when you say by yourself.
By myself. Well, I was like rave dancing once, and there was some birds.
So wait.
And squirrels, which may be why I can talk to the deer now, but.
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
So it was called intervention, and I wasn't allowed to talk to girls. So like if I was going to see people, I had to wear this like clothespin around my neck because I wasn't allowed to talk to people because I was like causing issues, because I was questioning, because I was like disrupting the weird shit that was happening, because I was like, something's not right. Like these are some freaking weirdos. Like, no. And then my parents didn't really know what was going on at this time because they're communicating just to the people and they're telling them, whatever. So fast forward, the guy's basically like, I never finished the program, quote unquote. Like I finished all my schooling and stuff, but I didn't graduate his program because I just wouldn't conform.
Let me ask you this, because as a parent, and you're close with your mom, right?
I am. Both my parents, yeah.
So they had to have been at a wit's end. That had to have been like, that's not something you're just like, hey, let's send our kid.
It's traumatic still.
So, but are you, looking back, do you understand why they did it? Now, the part about the two people coming in the room would be really hard to
the escorts
rectify that ever. And because that for me would be trauma.
It's a trauma.
I don't know how you get over that, because for me, if that was me, I'd be like, someone's coming to kill me.
Oh, for sure. It was like hindsight. They're like, oh,
shouldn't have done that.
That was a little stone's throw too far.
Okay.
But like, I mean, it's still traumatic for everybody, but do I understand that they felt backed into a corner? Yes. Do I think that it was the right choice? I mean, not necessarily, because nothing changed. So like, I was no different when I left than when I got there. I just had learned how to work inside a system that I knew hated me or didn't want me to succeed. And that was maybe the best lesson I could have ever had. Because I learned for 19 months how to function in a place where I knew it was wrong. I knew what was happening was wrong, but I had no choice, and I had to function within something that I knew just didn't really align with me.
Did you pretend conform? Did
No.
Just to sort of make your life?
No, I didn't. When I left, he said to me, "You'll never be anybody. You'll never do anything." And I was like, "Do you have money for cigarettes?"
Said that?
I was like, "Yeah, do you have money for cigarettes?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Okay." And he took me to the bus station and the Greyhound bus and put me on the bus in Missoula, Montana. And ended up in Cleveland 3 days later.
So how did this relationship end? Did you get kicked out of there? Or
I just was asked, kind of like, he just was like, "There's nothing we can do for you here."
And then when you went to Cleveland,
I just was home. I went home. Yep.
Okay. So that's a lot for a teenager to go through.
It is, but I don't know.
Well, but then it brings back. So what you're doing today, this advocacy and your purpose for these misfit toys, quote unquote,
the change makers,
right? And I feel your passion, and I feel and I love it, because everyone needs that. Like, you're advocating for these kids, and it makes so much sense, because you probably see yourself in a lot of these kids.
Of course.
But let's talk about the trades.
Yes. Oh, I love the trades.
I think it's very important with everything going on in the world, and in this boom of, entrepreneurs, and everybody can be rich, and you don't have to go to college and all these things. Well, what about the good old fashioned trades and the ways you can make a really good living? Is that a dying art? Is that a dying situation that we have to really talk about?
I mean, I think we should. I mean, Ohio is 41st in the nation for labor supply. And if you think about what we're doing here, we're attracting incredible companies. We have Intel coming, Amazon, other companies. Intel alone is going to take 7,000 construction workers to build it. 7,000. And I just saw an article in the Dispatch that was people like poaching people from construction companies. And I'm like, okay, so the skilled trades, we know we need this. Or we know that's going to make incredible jobs in pipelines for engineers and software and all of those things in this post-secondary world. But what about who's going to build it? Who's going to clean it? Who's going to do the maintenance in the building? Like, what are we doing to engage populations of not just kids who've dropped out, but adults to re-skill or upskill them to meet the needs that we have as things change here in this state.
And so you have 16 charter schools?
Yeah,
Is
so
that right?
we operate 16 charter schools throughout the state, around 4,000 students we've served. Last year, we graduated almost 1,000 students who had been otherwise disengaged, not engaged. Our average kid, just to give you a picture, is like 18 years old with about 20 to 25% of the credits they need to graduate, reading at a 4th or 5th grade reading level. And so you're talking about kids who are not able to read past that 4th or 5th grade level. Testing is written at an 8th grade level often. And so we expect kids to perform on all these like ancillary things and do good in like social studies and this elective when we haven't even addressed basic literacy issues. COVID didn't do us any favors in the education space, particularly with vulnerable populations of students. It hit them the most. Kids had to, kids didn't have internet connection. Kids didn't have parents who had the luxury of a salaried position that could work from home. We just had populations of students we haven't even understood the impact that we aren't even paying attention to it. And we have people focused on issues that are just not even important and relevant for the moment. And meanwhile, kids are falling 30 and 40% behind in their learning. And that's not going to get easier to slow that gap. The further that gap becomes, that's going to be harder for us to address.
So these charter schools, give me like an idea of when the kid comes to the charter school. Are you immediately talking to them about you could teaching them a specific trade, or how does that education process differ, and what happens when they start that journey? It
depends on where they come to us. So it's really individualized for each kid because it has to be. That's why the schools are not huge. They're like a couple hundred students because it has to remain small. Our students need attention wraparound like any human being. I don't function well being thrown into something and just having to do it on my own. I like tactile learning and somebody to help guide me. So just say you came to enroll in school. You're like, I only have 4 credits. I need 20 to graduate. I'm 20 years old. We have 2 years to help you before you don't get to be in the system anymore. And you've got to go get your GED or do an adult program. So what we do is you'd sit down with your family advocate or your counselor and you'd say, this is the plan. This is what you need to do. When you are going to be here, we'll start talking about career pathways, because if you start to explore those career and credentialing pathways too soon and then go into those, then you may not stay and receive your high school diploma, which is important. So we try to make that kind of like a glide slope. So while they're going towards the end of that high school, what they need to graduate in Ohio, they can get that skill. And they're like a week on in their academics, a week on to the job site, actually experiencing what it's like. So not just in a classroom, but in a hospital, building a home with Habitat, doing something so they actually understand what it's like to be there, because you can pretend you know what it's like to be on a construction site until it's -5 and you've got to be out there. And so they have to have real world experience because it has to be relevant or they don't give a shit. If it's not relevant, we don't care if it's not relevant. I don't know why we think that kids should care about things that aren't relevant to them.
No, it's hard to get anyone to care about anything in the abstract, I feel like, unless you experience something or someone you love experiences something, and then you can dial into what that's like. Right. I think the abstract is hard for anybody, especially a teenage mind.
and you're a victim of your single story. Mm-hmm. And so you just need to expose them, access, exposure.
Yeah.
A lot of these students I always say, our kids will make you see them one way or another. And that was kind of my motto, you're going to see me or hear me. On my terms or your terms, we can decide later.
That's actually really we need to take a minute for that, because you're right. You're going to see me one way or another.
Right. And so I'm like, wait, hold on, dude, I see you. We see you here. You don't need to go do this, this, and this. We see you. Okay, that's cool. You can be in that space and we'll meet you there. You don't need to come over here. So there's a real problem in this. I'm going to just talk about the state, like where people have written off kids. Like we've allowed ourselves to say some kids are going to drop out. My God, it's like, what are you going to do? There's a lot of stuff we can do. I can't believe that we've gotten to a place where people are just like, I mean, not everyone's going to graduate high school. Like, what do you mean? No. And they're like, well, it's just going to happen. Why? Why is that acceptable? Why is it acceptable that we allow, things to just keep failing, and that certain, like if it was my kid, it's not acceptable for my kid or anybody's kid, but some people are like, it's just, they've decided that it's okay for certain people to fail. And I don't really believe that. And so we take kids that people have benched and make them starters, and those kids are they're survivors. So you take kids who've been hustling and they are victims of trauma and they've had to learn how to survive. There is nothing more powerful than a kid that knows who they are and just needs a safe space to butterfly.
Yes.
To just give them a safe space.
And someone who cares.
That's
people
it.
who care can show them.
Our teachers are so freaking cool, and our staff, you should see some of the stuff they say about our staff will have to be like, we didn't pay them to say this. I swear to God, these kids, when you've been told you're bad, and every time you've questioned, you've been put to the back of the room, or you've been expelled for fighting, but your fighting was because you're sticking up for people, you get resentful, you get bitter, and you stop trusting. And when you stop trusting, you stop learning from adults. When you stop trusting adults, you stop learning from them, and you're closed. We have to get their trust. They completely open up, and it's a different ballgame, but it takes time and patience, and it's not for everybody. You will be called mean names.
Right.
You might get, hurt physically, maybe once in a while, but it's you just have to understand, people, I always come, they will make you see them. And eventually, the kids we've ignored won't be ignored anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, for me, I just still am shocked that we allow kids to drop out.
Yeah.
We're just okay. And we don't say no, we'll adjust it to make it work for you.
Hold it to yeah.
Let us make it work for you. Instead of saying, let us make it work for every adult here who we all went to college and we all want to pretend that this is the box that we operate in. I love it. We haven't changed education since the one-room schoolhouse. It's so boring.
I just wonder why. I mean, I know it's got to be a huge undertaking, but there's so many things in today's world that don't necessarily line up with, I'm not saying all the curriculum is wrong.
It's wrong.
I don't think it's wrong. But there are things that I just don't feel like
it's irrelevant.
If I had to treat, kind of put them in order of importance in the real world.
I mean, think about the collegiate experience. Think about myself. I went to college. I wasn't ready for college. I had no idea what I was doing. I was lost. I have a kid in college at Ohio State. He's thriving. I have a Bearcat coming up next year. So I'm going to be a Bearcat Buckeye. Maybe that's my Halloween costume. Who knows? Maybe I could do it. But the accountability component of that, I'm thinking, we have kids in high school we write off, and then we write off the kids that leave college. What do they leave with? So I took a Turkish literature class. What did I learn in that Turkish literature class? Nothing. No offense to Turkish literature. It was incredible. The books but I paid for that class and I didn't have the money. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things we can do. I will say something very controversial.
Uh-oh.
I don't think that 95% of jobs need a college degree. I think that the post-secondary experience is largely overblown. And I'm a person with multiple degrees. And children who I've been like, go to the trade school. I keep getting one of my kids trying to bite, like, do you want to go into politics? Do you want to go to a trade school? They don't want to do anything I do. It's like their rebellion.
Well, touche. Touche, mama.
Wow, what a rebellion. You really stuck it to the man, guys.
Speaking of politics, so a large part of your job, or tell me how much of your job is on the political side. I feel like you're lobbying and you're out there.
I advocate a lot. Yes, I work with everybody, and that's not popular.
Well, but I think you're pretty open about your politics too. So for you to have to cross lines and talk to a Republican.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all I hang out with anymore. I feel like, because my thing is, I'm a kid over party person. A kids over party. And that makes people really unhappy. And I think that there's some differences with regards to like local politics, federal politics. There's nuance locally. But the people that support charter schools and school choice, like, I believe like someone should go to school wherever is right for their kid. Because we know that the way that school districts were designed in the beginning was through redlining, which is, there's a book called The Color of Law. I don't get a kickback. It's incredible. The author actually came to UA years and years ago. And it's a book about how they designed our cities and how they redlined communities to be impoverished. And those were communities that were largely minorities, poor, people that are poor. And you can look around and see the areas now. If you go to look around, you're going to see your urban areas that are failing. You're going to see your thriving suburban areas. And that's by design. It's just by design. And unfortunately, the people that work to further educational choice, like if your public school works for you, great, go. If this private school works for you, great, go. If your homeschool works, great, go. That's my thing. But a lot of people don't feel that way. And that's not because of the options. That's a really sensitive topic for people because the political aspects of education comes down to adults. And it's a lot of times there's the school choice, ed freedom people, which are a diverse political background people. And we are working, unfortunately, against the machine that is the teachers union. So not the teachers themselves, but the actual kind of
the institution.
The institution of the teachers union, which, was founded in May of 1968 out of an uprising of a community in New York, a Black community in New York that wanted to self-govern their schools and operate them through a board. And the White Teachers Association there squashed that. And that's how NE8 was born. There's a book called The Strike That Changed New York. It's actually an incredible portrayal of the genesis of the modern day teachers union and what it was born from. So if you understand that, you see things a little differently. And so as I've learned more and mentored under people that have opened my eyes to differences than I had, or things that are different than I was taught, I've had to pivot my once like myopic view of what I thought. I don't have the luxury to say, oh, I don't agree with you morally on maybe say like reproductive freedom. So I'm going to just not work with you. And all these kids, they can just find someone else, I guess. It's not going to be me.
Do you think that's the universe? I mean, let's hey, Chris, maybe it is. Maybe it's the universe saying, because you definitely, and the thing I admire the shit out of is that you are unapologetic about your beliefs, but that can also get you into trouble. Yeah. Which you have, found that in different areas. So maybe it's the universe being like, knock, knock, Chris, we're going to give you this Rubik's Cube and you're going to have to figure this one out. Have you ever thought that? Because now you're like, well, shit.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've never been able to solve that damn Rubik's Cube.
Well, we're all solving it. It's all, everyone's solving their own.
And then put it and stick it on. Like, that's the kid I was. I was like, oh, let's stick the stickers.
So let's put you in a hypothetical situation. Yeah. Like you're having a dinner party at your house. Are you able to invite a Republican?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you don't Or would you bring up politics, or are you going to be like knifing somebody at the table because
no. So I actually am friends with a lot of people that are different than me than alike.
So do you just not talk about certain things, or are you able?
We talk about it, and I can say things like, "Tell me a little more about that."
Right.
I don't understand that. I don't agree with that, but I can see how you could. There's, it's just interesting to me because I've been guilty of using my own single story to project someone else's experience and be like, there's no way that your perspective can be right in absence of facts. Because there are some things that are factual versus not factual, and there's really no wiggle room. Mm-hmm. But I think in order to be able to receive people and honestly, be honest with yourself and receive people, you have to understand people are different than you, and they do have different experiences that have collectively come and colored who they are. And so I had to come to the place where it's not right or wrong for me. It's just not my experience. And if that's somebody else's experience, I can't really invalidate it. I just can't. Do I want to? Hell yeah, sometimes I want to invalidate someone's experience. But I can't because they had that experience. So
I think that's pretty evolved. And I think for you to say that, a lot of people can't look at themselves and self-reflect. So kudos to you for doing that, because a lot of people out there could also, do the same.
Yeah. That comes with one morning, cry a day. One shower, cry a day, and you too can
So here's...
I'm sorry, shower sob.
Shower sob. She feels a lot. She's an indigo child. She feels a lot. Yeah. So some of these things, so you've moved to Powell from Arlington. Arlington clearly is a very specific place to live, with a very,
a long time.
Right. And so I think you had a couple of bumps in the road here in UA.
Yeah, I got a couple guys who tried to be crazy and just had some extra time on their hands and didn't like me speaking up. That's okay. They found themselves where karma found them where they needed to go.
Yeah.
And escorted them there.
Yeah. Are there any moments that you can reflect on where you have been like, okay, maybe I was over the top here, or could have done that there? Or are you just kind of like, you know what? Something goes wrong and I'm feeling it, I'm going for it. And I'm not going to apologize for it.
Yeah. I think apology is overused. Mm-hmm. People are like, well, I'm so sorry, but they don't really feel it. So it's just this word that we say and this phrase. And
what are you sorry for specifically?
And people are like, well, I'm sorry for hurting you. But yeah, I mean, obviously no one wants to hurt somebody, really. Maybe Jeffrey Dahmer or a sociopath or something, I guess. But yeah, I mean, no. No. Are there times when I wish I could go back and have less emotion when I did something? Yeah, absolutely. But do I regret it? No, because I really have, I just think everything you go through kind of shapes you. But I think that my emotion, it's taken me a really long time to learn to take that in and reel my emotions in and not over emote and then lose the messaging and lose the context of what I'm saying. So that's taken me nearly 44 years.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of why you're here too. Like I said in the beginning, I just feel like the greatness gets so lost in some of the other stuff. And I'm like, no, this woman.
People like to focus on that. He says, I don't think it gets lost. I think people like to focus on.
Well, I agree with that too. Yeah. And I think, can I give you my, I'm going to give you my uncensored opinion. I think part of it has to do too, because you're a hot chick. And listen, I'm going to just go with my own experience seeing some of your selfies. And I haven't seen one recently. I don't know if you've put any sexy selfies up, but you are one of those people where I'll see the one that you sent me for this, that black and white one. And I'll look at you and I'm like, damn it. She looks like Bambi. She looks like a deer, like a beautiful deer.
I called Luke a baby deer.
And like your
My
lips
youngest.
and everything. And so, you've got this reputation here in the UA and, people are all like, Cris G W, did you hear this? Whatever. And then like you come through with this like sultry selfie and it's almost like you're like, oh yeah. It's a whole thing. I think
I once heard that Josh and I were swingers, which I thought was hilarious because, I mean, unless Chris Hemsworth and his wife are listening, we're not interested in swinging. No, we're not interested in swinging with his wife, just Chris Hemsworth for me. I'm kidding. But
That's
it's just
amazing.
like kind of funny. Like I actually just had a conversation with someone about, I had a man that I was a colleague that not in my company, but I worked with and just got upset about something. And myself and another woman who's an executive came more at us like these sluts, these whores, like, why do people do this to women?
Well, that's a whole other podcast.
But like the thing is just like, wow.
I'm sure that there were, I don't know if I heard the swinger rumor. So you're not, the pineapple upside down in your cart. So, but now you brought Josh up. So I also, how we look at things, like I look on Instagram and I try to like, you decide like what this is like. So let me tell you what I think it's like, because I don't know him, so I feel like, okay, he's a saint. First of all, let me just give you what I could be totally off. I feel like he's this saint and I think he has to have, he's not.
He is not.
I guess I have this opinion of him where like, you're this like colorful, wild,
like I'm the balloon going towards the sun.
Not even a balloon, but like just this, you're this horse in the stable that won't be, tamed. And it's part of why he wants to like, just, his attraction to you. Ride that pony. And, so that's why he's like, damn, this woman drives me mad. And I feel like he would be like a grounding. He just seems like a very nice, stable, grounding
I have
soul.
a surprise. He's not. Well, he's safe, but he's not grounding. I am not as exciting as people want me to be in their brains. So that is, I think, my biggest message is that people have a story they tell themselves about me. That is me when I was like 30 and they've never updated it.
So let's update it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I go to the wine cottage. I'm asleep by 9 every night. I take a lot of lupus meds. I work a ton and I feed my deer. But it's much, it's much better for people trying to escape their own lives.
I agree.
To make a story about you. And for me, I'm like, if you want to make that about me, like I'll illustrate it for you, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to change the story you wrote because I'm busy living mine.
I love that. I love that you're feeding your deer apples. I mean, because we've talked about this too. Living in UA, you make a commitment to not having space.
Personally, emotionally, mentally, physically.
Yeah. So for me, I can get my space here in those other ways. Like I'm very reclusive in certain ways, but just having the driveways butting up and having the physical.
And then going and everybody knows everybody.
Yes.
Because it's not a big community.
Right.
And there's one high school.
There's something very freeing
2
about
elementary schools. We have 16 or 18 in Olentangy. It's huge. 27,000 kids.
Thinking about you making that move for your family and just seeing, I haven't been in your home, but seeing what I see on Instagram and your space.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
I would love to come over.
We'll invite some Republicans.
It feels, you know what? That's right. That's right. You're only allowed to come over if you voted for Trump.
Yes,
we're gonna take this into a whole new realm.
You know what though? That's okay.
Yeah. Listen, I am very.
It's America.
I am very much.
My family didn't come here for us not to vote for who we wanted to vote for.
I hesitate to discuss politics at all because I am so. I don't identify as one thing or the other.
I'm a nomad. I'm a political nomad.
Yeah, I am very flexible with people's views and opinions.
You're a flexitarian.
I'm a flex. But I would love to come to your home and see like your. I just feel like that space was
built the same year I was.
It was just what you needed.
79.
79.
And the cool thing is that the family that built it. Some of the kids that grew up, like the cousins, and they've connected with me on Instagram and they're like, it's so cool that you have this house and you're loving it. And so that's been cool for me to connect with the original family that owned it. You can tell it's a home that was like full of love.
Yeah, that's good. And it continues to be. But we didn't answer the question about Josh. So
So Josh is not like, he's not a saint. He's a really complicated person. And has a lot of depth that people don't see. Very private. But he is the yin to my yang. And we've been through a lot. Like we got married and I was 19 when we got engaged.
Oh, you're kidding. I didn't know that.
I was 20 when we got married. So we've been married since 1999. So, and together since 98. So we've been through it all. We grew up together. So we've dissolved to the ground and shattered into a billion pieces many times over. And then, use the gold paint to build the shit back together. And that's not a weakness to me.
No, I could cheer up over that. I think that's...
So that to me is what people... You have to let people like take the parts of your story out of context. Mm-hmm. That's just what I've learned. And allow them to do it, because when you let it consume you, you almost give it breath. Mm-hmm. So just like, okay, go spiral off into your stuff. Does it hurt? Did it hurt? Yeah. You don't want people saying things about you that you know are not contextually right or are nuanced and they're not using nuance. Because no one knows your story about your marriage or your children or your life except for you. So I've learned, I guess, let the people people.
No, let the people. I mean, and you can take any chunk of life. For example, you can take marriage, and anyone who's been married for a certain amount of time, if you don't understand that marriage is hard and that it takes work, I'm not believing you. So you would hope that those people would have more empathy toward what marriage looks like over a 22-year span. There's going to be good times, bad times, times where you're like, how did we get through that?
Times when you're not even tethered to each other anymore. Mm-hmm. And that I feel bad for the people stuck in a cycle of treading in water in their lives, because they never get to, the pain is the growth. So if you told me, Josh and I have a better relationship now than we did a decade ago. And we've had harder times in that decade than we did the previous decade. So if that's what you got to go through to break through, that's fine with me.
I could not agree with you more. And I think that's fantastic. Let's just, I knew this conversation would go well. But I'm going to say you really did outdo yourself. You are brilliant and you're just freaking eccentric enough, and you tell the truth and you live in your truth. And I just hope that, not that it matters what people think, but I hope that people out there that know you from afar go, oh my gosh, I just got a really amazing look into who this person really is.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever told anyone all those things, but
there's a lot of beauty sitting in front of me, and it has nothing to do with the exterior.
Although I do get my Botox done.
Hey girl,
recently.
we have our tricks and our tips and
I
the
got
shit
my
we
eyes
do.
done.
I love it. And see, you're honest about all of that too.
I am. I did not wake up like this.
Well, many people would love to look like you, but thank you so much for coming,
Thank you for
Cris.
having me.
Truly, it's been an honor, and the gift of your time means everything. If you guys want to follow Cris GW and her amazing selfies and her beautiful life in Powell, it's Cris GW, right?
Yeah,
at Cris GW. I'll get some of the names of those books. We'll put those on the copy, and if you want to send Cris a DM, I'm sure she would. I'm sure she would love that.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, and so if you're still out there listening, hopefully you are. You can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Thank you so much for joining the Keri Croft Show. Stay tuned for the next episode next Friday, and until then, keep moving.